Hi guys, my name is Anna, you're watching simcue, and without further ado, let's get into this video. So today we are building Santa's workshop, but we're not even getting around to finishing it. I have to just disclose that right now, because this was a much bigger task than I ever thought it was going to be. In my mind, it was just like, oh, I'm just quickly going to build this little cute Christmassy town and have Santa's workshop and then it'll be all done. And reality then was that it was not at all a quick task. It took me so long. I think I spent approximately around like 9 hours building this, and then I had to cut it down to just 20 minutes, and that's just the exterior. That's just what you're seeing today. So we built the exterior. It took around 9 hours, and I really hope that at least just one person is going to be like, well, that looks pretty cool, that was like worth it. Because honestly, I have been questioning whether or not it was actually worth spending all of this time on this build. But here we are getting into the build. Right now I'm fiddling with some train tracks. That was my like vision for this whole build. I wanted this train with presents to pretty much go all the way around. And it turned out to be a much more difficult task than I anticipated, because I could only find train tracks from Horse Ranch that had like a slight bend. They weren't as rounded as I was hoping for. So it was a lot of back and forth using the tool mod, and then I was almost done, but on the other side it didn't really like stay within the lot, so I couldn't keep on placing them, so I had to make them even smaller and then replace and adjust and over and over and over. But the result I am absolutely stunned about. But it just goes to show that even if you have a simple idea in mind, it might not actually be that easy to pull it off. Because in my mind, I was like, sure, I'll just build a train track, place a train, place gifts. That'll be really nice visually. And yeah, I think the results are great, but it took so long. And I think that's why in general, this was just a very long build, because so many things were really fiddly and had to be like custom placed. It does give some really great visuals. I do think that this build is generally stunning, but it was so much work, and I am still questioning if it was worth pouring in 9 hours. I know I already mentioned it, but I don't normally spend this long on a build this size. This is not even a 64 by 64 lot. This is like a 50 by 50 lot, because the original idea was that I was going to place it in Granite Falls. Right now we're just building in Mount Komorebi, and then I was going to move it because I felt like then your Sims could sort of go on holiday, but also it was this like more hidden placement. So it made sense in my head that like, oh, Santa's workshop is kind of hidden away in the forest. But then I just ended up really liking this spot. I just think it's so pretty, and I felt like in the forest it would kind of be drowned behind all of the trees, where with this it's sort of got a prime location. So I actually end up just letting it stay here, but of course if you want to, this lot is picked so that it's the same size. So the forest in Granite Falls, where I planned this for, is a 50 by 50 lot, so you can always just swap it and place it there. Finishing up placing the ice skating ring, which was another thing that I knew from the very beginning that I wanted in this like Christmas town. And then we're just going to go in with some rocks or cliffs, depending on what you want to call it, from Snowy Escape. I really like that these had a bit of snow, so even if you visit and it's not actually snowing in your game, there is going to be just a little bit of snow. And the reason for me placing them is really just that the incline in the terrain was quite steep and I don't really like the look of it, so this was just an easy way to hide it. Aside from the train, I think this is probably one of my favorite parts, which is really just choosing the wallpaper for the exterior. I don't normally play around with these many colors in one build, but for a Santa workshop, I felt like it just made a lot of sense, though I did have to go back and forth quite a bit to figure out exactly the aesthetics that I was going for. Because just like my other builds, I did have some reference photos and they were very much going in like different directions this time. So some of them had more like stone and wooden buildings, and others were like really colorful, and I wanted to figure out a way to kind of do a nice mix, because I did find that it was kind of fun to play around with a lot of colors, but I also wanted them to be slightly more muted. Like the ones I picked first were just too bright for my liking. So finding colors that worked with both like wooden and stone wallpaper were a bit of a challenge, but I really like how it turned out in the end. I was quite surprised to find these really nice tiled wallpapers. Not tiles, but like almost like roof shingles for the walls. And they came in these stunning colors. But I think what surprised me was that I think one of them was from For Rent, another one was from Growing Together, and then a third one was, surprisingly enough, from Get Famous, which I did not expect, but which I really, really loved. That's probably also one of the reasons why this build ended up adding so many, especially expansion packs, to the list. I feel like I almost went a little overboard, but with each and every single choice I made, I was like, but it has to be this. One of those choices was the purple roofing that you're seeing on the green building. The purple roof is from Jungle Adventure, and otherwise I thought that it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to use Jungle Adventure for like Santa's workshop, but I actually ended up using just a few pieces from the pack that I really, really liked. But obviously turning 9 hours into just a 20-minute video means that there are a lot that have just been directly cut, so I went back and forth with all of these colors so many times. And I realized towards the end that it was honestly a little bit silly spending all that time just picking colors, because the idea is obviously that you are visiting this lot in wintertime and hopefully it is snowing. It's definitely at its prettiest when it's snowing, but that also means that all of the roofs are just going to be covered in snow and you're not going to see the color that I picked. But of course, if you choose to visit at any other time, since this is not actually up on Mount Komorebi, that was the original idea, but the lots were only 30 by 20, and I was like, that is way too small for what I have envisioned. So you can visit this, and if it's not snowing, it's obviously not going to be covered in snow, and you're going to see all of the lovely colors. But we will be adding even more color to this building, because right now we're picking windows, and I think I started out with just a safe pick, which is all of these wooden windows, very matchy-matchy, pretty much all from the base game, which was also a nice surprise. But later on we will be going back and we will change quite a few of them and just add a bit more of a color pop to this building. So pretty much everything you're seeing now, well, not everything, but a lot of what you're seeing right now will actually change in a short while. But before we get around to changing the windows, we're going to add a few details to our tunnel, and then also raising up these presents, because this was when I realized that you actually can't really see the presents in the train, and the idea was obviously that these carts would be filled with presents. But I will actually have to go back and make some changes to the presents again later, because some of them are going to be covered in snow and others aren't. So I'm of course changing out all of the ones covered in snow so that these presents look nice. And it is now the next day. I had a nice sleep. I went back with new fresh eyes and thought, let's add some more color to this build. And if you just saw me place red windows on a green building with purple roof, you would be right. And we will continue to just add kind of crazy colors to this build, but I would say it still stays kind of cohesive. With this flooring as well, I was a little bit tempted to just make it like fully red, and with the fencing, I went through all of these white ones, and then I thought about choosing a white one with like a red accent, but I found that it was a little bit too much. So there we went in with just wooden colors. You know, we're not too crazy. We're just a little crazy with the colors today. And then we're getting around to another of my favorite parts of this build, which are all of these small houses that are really adding to our Christmas town. And all of these houses are for the elves, or essentially your Sims, and they're pretty much all built using the half walls, because the rest of the build is in medium wall height, and I found that that was just too tall for these small cute buildings. But since we're using a half wall, that also means that the roofs pretty much have to be like custom placed. So to do that, I build a little box. I then lower it so the top of it matches the height of the half wall. Then I place the roofs on the little box, and then I sort of drag them across to where I want them to go. And this was in general a tedious process, but on top of that, working with diagonal rows meant that I had to place them correctly on the box for them to actually line up with the rest of the build. And it's a little hard to explain, but it feels like the diagonal grid is more like working in halves, so I could sort of place the roof a little bit off and then it wouldn't really match, and then I had to redo it. So a very tedious process. And then if you make any changes to the walls, like I just did with these two buildings, the roof just deletes. And I assume it's because the game think of them as floating, and then when you make any changes it just deletes them. I don't really understand why, but it makes it a very tedious process. But in the end I do think that it was very worth it, because these turned out so cute. They're so teeny and tiny, and we will be adding so many details and decorations to them, and I love how they turned out and really just add to Christmas Town. And I obviously also went in with a lot of colors on these, so they are green and red, mainly because I then went with the same paneling on all of them and there wasn't a blue swatch to this panel, so they're green and red and also like gingerbread brown. And the reason I in general went in with so many colors both for the main building and for all of these small houses is because I kind of imagined that Santa would have a very colorful workplace, very colorful surroundings, because he's making toys for children, and children's toys are just so colorful. So that's kind of what this whole build and town is embodying. And again, I was pleasantly surprised to see actually how many base game windows came in these colors that I needed. Normally I would obviously not use them, because I normally wouldn't have very red or very green windows for my builds. But for this, it really came in handy. I haven't really commented on it before, but the roof trim on all of the houses, I'm pretty sure is from For Rent. Originally, I wasn't really planning on using the pack, but I thought it looked so cute. This detail almost looked like snow, or more so like the icing detail on gingerbread houses. So I think especially for the brown ones, it looks really nice. But of course, to make it a little bit more cohesive, I chose to do with all of them, because if you're not visiting when it's actually snowing, it could also look like a snow detail. For the roofing, I started out with making them all like blue and red, but I found that that was actually a little bit too much, so I ended up just going with this base game brown one that also almost looked a little bit gingerbready, but just to make it slightly more cohesive. And then I remembered that we have this lovely debug fence from Outdoor Retreat. There is this rounded version, but unfortunately it was not really at the same angle as the train tracks. But with these just like two-piece fences, I could sort of make it almost rounded and follow the train tracks, and I thought that looked really nice, and just adds a little bit of security to Christmas Town. And don't worry, it won't be long now. We will have the snow, because most of the colors are done, which is why I'm building without the snow, and then it's going to look super magical, and we're going to get into decorating Christmas Town. And for the decorations, I used both the ones from Seasons and the ones from the free holiday stuff pack, and I actually found that we had quite a lot, but at the same time I was kind of using the same ones like over and over, simply also because there are just some of them that I don't really like, but it was enough to make all of the builds look kind of unique and have their own decorations, and just adding so much of a Christmas feeling to this place. And you might think that another 6 minutes of decorating is a lot, and you would be right. This took a long time. It's not only decorating, there's also me doing a few more details on the main building and then adding so many lights, because I stumbled upon the very nice string lights from Businesses and Hobbies. I was not planning on using that pack because I find that the interior is more of like a modern style, and that didn't really fit this build. But simply for these string lights, I had to use the pack. They end up looking so gorgeous, as you will see later on, but unfortunately, I also think that they were causing the game to have a bit of an issue. This is a heavy build. Unfortunately, if you are playing on a computer with lower specs, this might cause some issues, because normally my computer runs the game like a beast, even though I pretty much own every single expansion pack, stuff pack, game pack, not all the kits, because why? But still, it runs very smoothly, but this time it actually were struggling a little bit with this build. It took a bit longer to load. It was a little bit laggy when I later had a test sim and I went back and forth between live mode and build mode, but it did still run smoothly when I was just in live mode and testing things out. But you will be able to see it later when I start adding the lights. That's when it's really starting to struggle, because I add so many string lights and it gets to the point where it like adds the string light. It's not really delayed in adding them, like actually placing the string lights, but it is delayed in showing the actual lights, like loading in the shadows, loading in the light, lighting up the actual build. Like in the beginning it goes quite smoothly, and then when we start adding the lights on the bigger build, you can tell that there's now just so many items on this lot. If it was just the build itself, I don't think it would have been an issue, but because you obviously want to add a lot of decorations and a lot of lights, since it's Christmas Town and Santa's workplace, it really is so many individual items that the game started struggling a little bit. But if you normally don't have any issues running the game and have a lot of packs, I don't think you will have an issue once it's actually loaded. I think it will be a little bit slow to load for me. That's okay, but I don't think you will have any issue when you're actually playing it. At least I hope so. And then I hope you'll tune in next week, where we are doing the interior and general finishing up this build, and where I will give you the grand tour. So many hours of footage had to be cut to turn this into just a 20-minute video, so I'm very much looking forward to giving you the full tour. So if you like this one, please come back next week. Other than that, I wish you a lovely day. I hope to see you next time, and bye!